Yeah, I have strong opinions about this one. So if you want to build a personal brand and build your website up where the SEO is so perfect that all the clients are going to come rushing to you, have fun having no clients and never getting business. So while the rest of us keep cold outreaching and go get business the hard way, it's also very relieving because if you know you can cold outreach and go get clients, you have the confidence now of you can go get clients by yourself, regardless of what anyone else is doing. And that's a huge confidence boost. So that is the most effective way to get clients. And I think you should always be doing that. Even if you have too many clients on your plate and it's overwhelming to you, you should still be doing outreach, because this is how you avoid the feast and famine cycles, is constantly getting new business. It's like oxygen. You don't have a business if you don't have business. So I think that's a huge one, is to just always keep doing cold outreach. I'll keep doing it forever. No matter if I have the biggest personal brand and everyone's begging to work with me, I'll still keep doing cold outreach.
You are going to love this episode with Jeff Poppy. He is a direct response copywriter. He specializes in LinkedIn thought leadership and email funnels. He's someone who got his foot in the door and found freelance success fairly quickly. So I think it's really important that if you are looking to get into freelance copywriting as your full-time career, listen to this episode and the takeaways and the lessons that he provides. They're super packed with value and based on real life experiences. I know Jeff because I actually outsource writing to him. Outsourcing is my 2023 skill that I'm learning, and Jeff has been that go-to writer who understands direct response, understands how to capture a client's voice, and he is just really good at what he does, which prompted me to ask him to come on the podcast and mentor and give advice to other freelancers who want to be doing what he's doing. So I know you're going to get a ton of value out of this episode. Please reach out to me on Instagram. My handle is @paidcopywriter on all of my social media channels. And I love hearing the feedback and your takeaways, and just knowing how these interviews impact you is super, super rewarding and keeps me going, keeps me creating content. I'm Christine from paidcopywriter.com. I teach aspiring freelance copywriters and content writers how to reach out to higher paying clients, work for clients that value you as a copywriter and understand the value of good copywriting. If you're interested in that, you're going to want to visit paidcopywriter.com and grab my free LinkedIn guide. I share with you my backstory, how I got into freelance copywriting, and how I used LinkedIn to build my business, and step-by-step instructions for you to get on there as well. Whether you're brand new to LinkedIn or whether your LinkedIn just needs to be brushed off and given a freelance makeover, that guide is going to be super valuable. It's at paidcopywriter.com under free downloads. Jeff Poppy, let's get right into it. Tell me a little bit about your background and how you got started in copywriting.
I'll start off with college. I went to the University of Arizona, which is where I live right now. I went to U of A for 2 years, transferred to Grand Canyon University. I was just bouncing around through college, had like 5 majors or so. So I had no idea what I wanted to do. And then I ended up getting into sales at Mountainside Fitness, which is a commercial gym chain here in Arizona. And that was good. I really appreciate having a background in sales. I think that's huge for copywriters. But I did that for a little bit, and then I just realized, or I got another job after that too, which I had for 1 week, and then I quit. So after that, I was just pretty distraught. I remember sitting in my room and just being like, I need to make money online. I don't know how to do this. I left those jobs, and I was just sitting there like super desperate. I was going to do anything. My plan was to either donate plasma and do Uber driving. I was going to do anything to make money that was not having to work for someone. But then I just typed into Google how to make money online, found copywriting, and just pretty much learned it all myself. And then was just doing outreach, learned how that worked at the very beginning on Upwork and just sending out email. But I remember I made my first $300 from a client, and it just broke my mind that I made money without having to ever like speak to someone in person, completely online through my own business. So when that happened, I was just enthralled, and I've just kept going ever since. I've never had like a burning passion for writing. I just needed a way to make money fast. And, now I'm very passionate about it, but that came with time.
That's amazing. There's a lot of parallels between your journey and mine. So you had sales training and you were doing like fitness sales?
Yeah, so I was doing gym sales. That was funny because it's, when you go from selling the membership to learning how you're selling a transformation instead, which is the same thing with copywriting. So that's a huge mindset shift, is you're not selling the actual thing, you're selling what people want, the outcome of the thing. So there was that background of sales that was huge for my start, and I only had to stay in that for a little bit of time to kind of learn the gist of sales and then learn the rest of sales through copywriting.
Yeah,
Mhm.
you really do see those similarities. And I think even if you've had like a customer facing, like customer service job or retail job, I think even those backgrounds, people discount it, but it's like, no, you learned how to deal with people, how to be polite to people, how to address people in a certain way. And that is a subset of a sales ability, a sales skill, which translates really nice into copywriting. When you're getting trained as a salesperson, they'll say like, oh, how do you overcome this objection? And how do you sell it this way, sell the benefits and not the features? And that's exactly what we're doing, but with words as copywriters.
Yeah, and that's what I like to say too is all copywriters can do content writing, but not all content writers can do copywriting, because as a copywriter, you're pretty much just a salesman. And that was another reason why I got into it, was because I started to learn about leverage, and I learned how, as a salesperson, I could only speak to one person at a time. So I could only scale my income up to like whatever it could be, however many people I could talk to at once. But I realized with copywriting, I could talk to unlimited amount of people, have one-on-one conversations with an unlimited amount virtually, and sell that way. So you're basically just a salesman to talking to more people than one salesperson could talk to. So that's what I think about it.
Are you familiar with Alex Hormozy?
Yeah, absolutely. One of my biggest role models for sure.
Yeah, I was gonna say it sounds like in terms of fitness sales, there's so many parallels there. And yeah, I'm a really big fan of him and his wife. They're awesome.
Yeah, yeah. He's a great copywriter too. I've studied his copy as well.
And he's kind of someone who was like in the fitness business, but then learned about funnels and the whole online marketing world and forayed into that and just dominated. We could go on and on about that. But
Yeah.
let me ask you this. What led you to LinkedIn thought leadership and social media copywriting? And tell me a little bit about the types of copywriting you do. Obviously, you and I connected because you and I are in a working relationship where I'm outsourcing some of my copywriting work to you, and you've been great. So I'm interested to hear, how did you get into this type of copywriting?
This isn't my main money maker. Usually email marketing is where I make most of the bread from, but the thought leadership ghostwriting I use as a tool, and I want to make a broader point about this because I use it where I'll get a client, an email marketing client, or I'll do web copy or something like that. And as soon as I've given them results and they like that they work with me and we work together well and I've proven myself, then you can start to upsell them on LinkedIn ghostwriting, because if you're working with a company, the CEO has a very high hourly rate. He doesn't have time to do this. So that's the main pitch there, is with the thought leadership ghostwriting on LinkedIn. All these executives don't have time to do that. So that's the best possible upsell that I could think of. But it pretty much just fell in my lap because I haven't gotten most of my clients on Upwork. I've gotten a few. However, just one woman just reached out to me, and she's a chief people officer, and she just wanted someone to write thought leadership ghostwriting for her. And I was like, how many other executives need this? So I wonder how many are out there. And then I just started reaching out, and that's been one of the highest response rates for an outreach pitch I've ever had, because it's in such high demand. So for anyone listening to this, that's a huge thing to get into. It's fantastic.
What would you say to people who don't feel like they know enough or they're not good enough to be writing thought leadership content for CEOs and executives?
I would say that that's something in your mind that's a limiting self-belief that you have, and that you need to get over very fast if you're going to make it anywhere in this game, because you can learn anything you want on the internet anywhere. And you believing that you can't do that is just it's your own self-limiting belief. If the opportunity presents itself, like, say that you know how to do it and then learn how to do it, because you can learn anything, even if it's the most niche topic. I've written for some tech and SaaS companies where it's something that I knew nothing about before I started, but that's part of the fun, is diving into the industry and researching and becoming an expert in a bunch of these little niche industries. So, learn about it for that reason too, just because it's fun. That's the best way to go about that.
Yeah, I think people who are curious and interested in psychology and personal development do really well in this field versus, oh, I'm such a great writer. I think that's the biggest misconception is, oh, you need to love writing or be great at writing. But there's so many other facets to this where other skills make you a strong freelance writer.
Absolutely. Like, the writing portion is such a small part of it. This is a controversial opinion, but I think that's a big distinction to make, is you're a psychologist, like maybe a psychopath, but you're a salesperson first. So you need to have that, and then the writing will come after that. Because if you can't get clients, you can't write for anyone. So you're a salesperson first and then a writer second. So I want to make that distinction really clear.
Yeah, and we'll get into that too, because that's the main thing I teach on is client acquisition, because that was one of the first things I noticed was, okay, writing really isn't the problem. It's the ability to actually get writing clients. And that's how you learn copywriting too, which we could also get into is the feedback and the revisions. That's where you are made a copywriter, not by theory and copy critiques in some course that you enroll in or whatever. It's through working with the client. And I think you and I had that advantage of being salespeople where our job was to get the foot in the door first and foremost. Whereas a lot of copywriters stay stuck spinning their wheels because they're like, well, I've been learning, but how do I actually get my foot in the door doing this? And the answer, as you were saying before, you say you're ready before you're really ready and you start doing the work and you get scrappy and resourceful.
I want to harp on this point. I 1,000% agree because then this is the reason why I hated school all my life was because it was all theory and there was no actual testing in the real world. So as a salesperson, especially like a door-to-door sales rep, you get feedback instantly. You'll get a door slammed in your face. So right when you try something, you're going to get immediate feedback. And that's the fastest way to learn. So, and that's how I got my start copywriting. That's why I've been able to get where I am in a relatively quickly time frame is because I started outreaching before I learned how to do copywriting. And then I tried it on the first few clients, and you're going to suck off the beginning. Probably you're not going to be fantastic immediately on your first sales page or whatever, but you'll get good really quick. And that's the best way to jump in for sure.
Yeah, and people think they need to be super confident or super experienced. But I mean, I can just say from someone who hires writers, who actually I'm working with my virtual assistant right now, who's helping me with a lot of stuff. And as a business owner, I want to train somebody. I want to know that they have the raw abilities and the ability to learn and that they have a certain amount of intelligence to grasp concepts. But I don't expect people to just come in off the bat and be perfect and know my brand. So I think copywriters, freelancers, if you're intimidated, listen to that advice where the client has to set you up for success as well and provide you with what you need. And the other 50% is you learning and trying and making mistakes. And I think everyone just thinks they need to come in as this expert or they're going to be found out as a fraud.
And there's going to be edits and revisions and feedback. And hopefully the best thing to do is to just, even if your first draft that you sent over to the client comes back and they hated it, the best thing to do is to just try to like get around that learning curve as fast as possible. So that happens to everyone, even the most expert copywriters. It's going to be same with the thought leadership ghostwriting for LinkedIn. So what I find is I'll send it over to a client, but they have a completely different style of what they're looking for than me. So you kind of have to be a chameleon and wear different hats and just adapt because it's their product at the end of the day. So you shouldn't have an ego about it. You should go in and do exactly what they're looking for and try to just help them the best you can.
Yeah. And I want to get into that because you and I had that conversation where I'm like, Jeff, I don't know how you're good at taking feedback because I get so scared and offended and I take it so personally. So I want to go down that rabbit hole real quick, but tell me about LinkedIn thought leadership. If someone is interested in getting into this, they're like, that sounds like something I want to pursue. Tell me about that as a copywriting deliverable and the value that it provides to the client and why it's worth it for copywriters to potentially check out.
Yeah, so that one's a little bit of an interesting one because usually like my main money makers right now are email marketing specifically because the result is tied to the performance of the campaign and there's direct amount of money coming in to what I do. So it's easily trackable of how much money I brought in and how much I can earn from that. This is a little bit different because it's a thought leadership piece. So it's meant to inspire, educate, or give something of value to their audience, but it's not necessarily going to bring in a direct amount of money. The reason why it's so profitable is because these executives, these companies are at such a high level and they've been working for this company for so long and they've built up such a high hourly rate that it's literally not worth their time to do these LinkedIn posts. And you can pitch it to them in that way of asking them what their hourly rate is. And then that's how you gauge the pricing on it is if it takes a few hours of your hourly rate, which is $100 an hour, whatever, and then you do the math and then you say like, if I could take that off your plate and then you keep pitching it that way and like how much money would you save on that? And it would also build your audience in the background and give more awareness of your brand and position you as an industry leader and authority figure. And so that's the easiest way to do there. My favorite outreach, just advice for people if they're going to outreach in this method, is to pitch it in a way where it's like if you've seen some nice posts on LinkedIn, like do you know who wrote those? So that's one of my favorite things, because people don't realize most of the posts they're reading are written by copywriters. So like learning how the world works in that way is a mindset shift to help you believe that you can actually get into something like that.
That's amazing. Tell me about your writing process and like the research and how you kind of start doing this writing because and then we'll talk about feedback and revisions and what we were saying before where I'm like, "Oh my gosh, the client like want every time I see revisions, I don't know why, I just take it personally." So maybe you could just speak to that mindset too of like how to get past that because I guess my fear is I always think like, "Oh no, the client's going to think I did a bad job and they're not going to continue to give me work." And I get nervous about that, even though it's a limiting belief for sure. But I'm like you, where I'm very strategic with upselling and maintaining these long-term relationships. I think I've been profitable because I don't have to hustle for clients super often because I can continue to get recurring work from them. So when I get feedback, I'm like, oh no, this is hurting the long term. So I know I said a lot there, but my questions were tell me about the writing and research process and like revisions and stuff like that.
Yeah, so I guess the best thing there is I would have to just say trial and error. I hate to say it, but it's true. So do what you think is best, get feedback, do the revisions. But the best way, if we're going to get technical about this, the best way to do it where you can keep that client relationship is to send it over to them with, either a Loom video of yourself going over and explaining your thoughts, and just being very open to say to them, hey, this is just the first draft. Any edits and revisions are fine. I just want to get your voice and know exactly how you're looking to pitch this. And your client's going to understand that if you pitch it in that way. But as far as the writing process, you need to do, this is part of the fun of being a copywriter, is even if it's a brand new industry, you do a deep dive very quickly and learn everything you can about that industry in a few hours, maybe. Just do it as fast as you possibly can. And then whatever you're writing about, obviously keep your target avatar in mind, who you're speaking to, what their problems are, and just do that as fast as possible. And the more experience you get, the faster you'll be able to do that for each client. I hate to say it, but it's just feedback, and that feedback loop.
Yeah. And that research process is so key. I think one of the hardest lessons I had to learn was that because for some reason, I guess this is just how I work. I jump into things very quickly and I just want to start doing something. But in the copywriting process, I've had to say to myself, no, you're not going to start writing this yet. You got to spend some time in the research, not doing anything. And then once you do go to write, it'll come much quicker because you have that big knowledge repository that you built up in the research process. So I can't stress that enough, is just like spending that time doing that deep dive.
Yeah. So I kind of have like I 100% agree with that, but there's also a little bit of a counter there where I have a big belief in like speed wins in this game. So obviously you don't want to put something out that's half-ass, excuse my language, but you don't want to do something like that. You always want to make sure that it's up to your standard. But that's part of the fun of it too, is this is why content writers can't make quite as much money as copywriters, is because we have a time frame on it and there's an objective behind it. And the faster you can turn these out and the faster you can get more clients, the faster you can scale, and the faster you'll learn how to do it. So just the more reiterations you can do, the better.
And I think that's also the benefit of specializing, is that because a lot of people will be like, oh, Christine, you don't need to have a niche. Don't bother. Don't box. I don't want to box myself in. But it's like, how can you expect to write fast and grasp things quickly if you don't specialize, right? Because I'm sure for you, you have this frame of reference because your clients are somewhat talking about similar topics and end goals, right?
Yeah, so I kind of have a way to think about this. I've thought about this a lot with niching down or going broad. I think it should be kind of like an hourglass. So I think at the very start, you should be getting anything you can possibly get to get any experience. If anything comes your way, try it out, do whatever you can do. And then naturally you'll start to find what you're better at, what you enjoy writing more, where there's more of a demand in the market. And then that'll kind of niche you down to a point where you're kind of doing one thing and you're the go-to person in that niche and you've kind of made a name for yourself. And then once you have that experience and the case studies and everything to back yourself, then you can start to broaden back out and start to offer different services and do different things for people because you already have that proof and you know that you can do it.
That's a really good analogy. I like what you said about the hourglass because that kind of gives you a visual to understand. That's amazing. Okay, is there any notable like learning experiences or or resources that you found really helpful to learn copywriting?
YouTube. I would say that's one of the number one things you can do. You can pretty much learn anything. If there's one of the benefits of taking a course is that you don't have to poke around everywhere and find everything all over the place. It's just in one aggregated place. So a course can get you from A to B. And I think anything, if you're really serious about this and you want to go far in this industry, anything above your living expenses, spend on courses and things to speed up your time to results. So if you're struggling with outreach, take a specific course on outreach. If you're struggling with, whatever it may be in copywriting, take a specific course on that. Like you can quite literally just you can buy more money by buying the skills that make you more money. So that's that's a huge one for me.
Yeah, I like that you said that because that's something I've had to learn because I tend to be frugal and risk averse. So I'm like, okay, I'm just going to consume every single piece of free content that exists in the world. And it's like, you just make it so much more complicated for yourself. And specifically for freelance copywriters, I always get the same DMs and requests of like, I just don't know where to start because I've been consuming so much information. And that's the blessing and the curse of the internet, is that there is so much information. And when you get all these conflicting strategies and views and opinions, it can be very paralyzing.
Yeah, so I definitely have something to say about this too. This is another strategy and some advice I'd give to if you're really serious about this. It's kind of some crazy advice, but it's served me pretty well. Is delete all your social medias that are not serving you on your copywriting mission and keep either YouTube or whatever it may be, but make sure the only things you're consuming are educational to where you want to go in your copywriting journey. So you can kind of just curate your entire environment to do that. As well as I would start with, it's kind of funny because it's like the chicken or the egg thing, right? Like you need to know how to write copy to be able to pitch out, like reach out to clients, but reaching out to clients, you might get one and then you don't know how to write copy, whatever. But still, I'm very much in the camp of go get the clients first, because that's the hardest part, and then figure out how to do it after, because it's kind of crazy how fast you can learn how to write copy when you have no choice and you have a client that needs it from you. So if you give yourself the clients like coming in and you just perfect your outreach, then you'll learn how to write copy fast.
Fail fast, like get out there, make the mistakes, take the bumps and the bruises, and you'll learn so much faster that way. And any type of copywriting, you can go online and take a stab at it. For me, I started out with blog writing in the content writing realm. And that was me going online, looking at how a blog post was structured on the internet and kind of emulating it and trying my best. Same with emails, with ads. You just look at what's out there and you take your stab at it.
Yeah, it's like if you were to have to drive across whatever country you live in, would you build a car from the ground up with the tires and the axle and the steering wheel, and then you'd get in it and drive, or would you just get in one that already works? And this is where a swipe file comes in, is where take something that has already worked, it's proven to work, and just adapt it to your client. Like, don't feel guilty that you're copying something, you're stealing someone else's whatever. Just take the concepts of what work and start to notice why it's working, or why it could be working, why someone would be reading that and think and take action on it, and then take those elements out and just use them. So it also speeds up your process, and there's no guesswork. You're not like guessing if your copy is going to work. You're using someone else's that's proven. So that's been a huge thing for me, is when you get your first few clients and you start to do your first bit of work and you get feedback, then you can just use your own past swipes that have worked very well. So that's huge. It's a huge point I want to hit home on.
Yeah. And something, I think it may be Justin Welsh who said this. We tend to go on social media and scroll past things and delete emails, and we're consuming all this content, but you have to stop and start analyzing the messages that are out there. And if something made you stop your scroll, take note of that and say, okay, why did that hook get me to stop? What was interesting about that for me? And I've now become that person where I'm screenshotting and putting it right into the swipe file, because it's not my industry, but I'm like, how can I translate that into my marketing messages to stand out?
Yeah, I've taken things from a completely polar opposite industry. I've taken things from like health and wellness, like direct response, like supplement sales, and turned it into a tech post, like just completely opposite, because the psychology is there behind it. So as long as you understand that, and that's why I also think doing the most salesy direct response cold email, like that's one of my main sources of income is cold outreach emails on behalf of other companies. So that super salesy direct response where someone at the end of 150 words, they have to click a link and get on a call or send you money or whatever. Once you know how to do that, you can expand that into any other content writing and you use those tactics anywhere else. So that's the most important thing to learn. And it also helps you with your own personal outreach. So I think that's number one stop for copywriters. If you're going to start on one thing, it would be learn how to do the super salesy direct response email to book a sales call or whatever, because that can just translate into everything else.
Yeah, having those sales abilities. That's a really good point because I think a lot of people are super scared of selling and they don't like the term selling. But if you're going to be a copywriter, sales and marketing is the thing. So you can't be that averse to it.
You got to get over that fast if that's something that you're struggling with. And it's, easier said than done, but it's a huge confidence boost when you can reach out and you're not afraid to keep a straight face and sell to someone and have that conversation. You're not afraid to ask them for money. Once you learn how to do that, it's a huge confidence boost because you're like, okay, I can actually do this now. Like I'm comfortable in this situation. So that's a huge one.
100%. Could you explain how freelancers should be using cold outreach? Because you did sales, now you're using those sales abilities for companies to be able to book calls, book meetings. And then there's the other side of this, where as freelancers, we need to be reaching out and grabbing these opportunities. Talk to me about your cold outreach efforts to land copywriting gigs.
Yeah. So in general, there's a few things I want to hit here. Number one is in general, you don't want to say I at all, if possible, or limit your I, me. Please don't reach out to a company and say, I want to provide copywriting services for you. The best thing to do is say, if you could increase X by this, or bang, 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 whatever outcomes you can give to them, would that be worth a few minutes on a call or something like that? So you want to position it as like, if you were to have this amazing dream outcome, would that be worth just a few minutes to talk to me about it or whatever? And worst case scenario, and this will be in the PS section of whatever outreach you're doing, is do a little reversal where it's like a guarantee of, on this call, I'll still go over your whole thing. I'm an expert in this industry and I can show you exactly what I noticed on your website was different of whatever. So just figure something out and give them as much value as you possibly can on the call. But put that in your initial message, that so they think when they read that, first of all, it's hitting on an actual pain point that they have. So do your research before, but when you send that message, make sure that on the call with you, you're going to actually give them some value and then sell them second. So that's number one. And then number two is you need to do so much outreach that it would be unreasonable for you not to land a client. So you need to do it before, yeah, you need to do it like before, late at night when you start falling asleep at your computer. Then that's when you go to bed. Then you wake up the next morning and you go straight to your computer and you start doing more outreach. And you should do so much that it would just be more unreasonable for you not to get a client than for you to get one. So like 10x your volume, that's off the bat too. But also LinkedIn and cold emailing are huge. So those are the one and two. Upwork works, not a huge fan of that one, but just 10x your outreach. Same thing for email and LinkedIn. Just alternate between them and just go.
Yeah, I love what you said about removing the word I, because I think that is probably the number one mistake freelance copywriters and anyone who's just online pitching. Being on YouTube, I get pitched a lot of video editing services, and it's always like, I want to create your thumbnails. I want to this. So even if anyone downloads my template playbook, find and replace, and I look at all the times I use the word I in the pitch and remove it, because you want it to be about the customer, the prospect, because as humans, we're really wired to read every message and filter everything through what's in it for me. What is in this for me? You're reaching out to me. What can you do for me? So when you come off the bat saying, I'm looking for copywriting roles, the response is like, well, good for you. How does that help me? So I love that. And I also love that you provide that value in terms of like, hey, I'm an expert and I want to tell you what you can do. Where copywriters go wrong with that is pointing out issues. Like a lot of people will reach out to me and be like, your thumbnails like aren't getting clicks, or like you have a spelling error here. And it's like, thanks, bro. I don't have that much time in a day and I'm doing the best I can. And now you're making me feel like I suck and I don't want to get on a call with you. So can you explain that a little bit of like how to like not point out people's sore spots, but want to offer value.
Yeah, you don't want to dig the knife in too hard. Like you don't want to offend anyone, but the best way to do that is, but you do need to, there is a pain in their life somewhere that they're looking for a remedy to, and you need to find that, but you also want to pitch it in a way where it's not offensive to them, where you respect the work that they've done and you really like what they've been building, but you're like, hey, I really respect what you've been doing. I see you're building this amazing thing. I just think it could be a little bit better in this area. And that's how you want to pitch it, because they're gonna feel respected. So you want to play on their status too. And you want to like actually genuinely want to work for them. And that'll come across in your message. But you want to point that out you want to be very tactful about that.
Yeah, and maybe even just saying I've helped this notable person in your industry increase open rates by this, and even that could be kind of appealing to their status as well, because it's like, well, I've helped this person who's in your industry and they trusted me, and I think of you in the same caliber as them, and I'm reaching out to you. So that's, I think the status thing is huge.
Yeah, it's funny to always go back to, this will always work, is to go back to the main psychological needs that people need, like the Maslow's hierarchy of needs of, what people are looking for. And if you, those will always work when you play on those. So you want to do it in a respectful way, but those will always be there to use.
For sure. There's some debate about like, oh, you shouldn't be cold pitching, or that's not the best way. You should start a personal brand and have people reach out to you and referrals. Like there's all these different strategies. What do you think about cold outreach? Is it the way to go?
Yeah, I have strong opinions about this one. So if you want to build a personal brand and build your website up where the SEO is so perfect that all the clients are going to come rushing to you, have fun having no clients and never getting business. So while the rest of us keep cold outreaching and go get business the hard way, it's also very relieving, because if you know you can cold outreach and go get clients, you're never really, and this goes back to what we talked about earlier about the being afraid of the edits and revisions and, oh no, I'm going to lose this client. You have the confidence now if you can go get clients by yourself, regardless of what anyone else is doing. And that's a huge confidence boost. So that is the most effective way to get clients. And I think you should always be doing that. And another thing I want to hit on is, even if you have too many clients on your plate and it's overwhelming to you, you should still be doing outreach, because this is how you avoid the feast and famine cycles, is constantly getting new business. It's like oxygen. Business coming in is just like oxygen to your business. You don't have a business if you don't have business. So I think that's a huge one, is to just always keep doing cold outreach. I'll keep doing it forever. No matter if I have the biggest personal brand and everyone's begging to work with me, I'll still keep doing cold outreach. Plus you get to target your target clients, and you don't have to rely on who's coming to you. Not that that would happen anyway, because that building the brand and the whole big picture comes after the cold outreach. You have to pay your dues first.
I think this is something people don't talk about in the freelance world, is like, okay, yeah, you're talking about your make 6 figures, 7 figures, but how do you do it? And that's the big mystique. And I think what you touched on is part of that. It's that you have to constantly be, and this is going to sound savage, but getting rid of lower paying clients and replacing them with higher paying clients. And how do you do that? Well, you have to incrementally raise your rates, and you have to take a risk telling that client that you are raising your rates. And there's a chance that they're going to say no. And that's scary. But if your pipeline is filled with opportunities and you have other opportunities coming your way, you can confidently raise your rates and be okay with the outcome.
Yeah, so this is something I've been experiencing lately, and this is a point I want to hit on, is these companies that you're reaching out to, if you're reaching out to the right ones, they're making millions of dollars a month. So you raising your rates by a little bit, it's almost irrelevant to them. So you would be surprised if you do your due diligence and you see how much revenue is coming into the company, and you do your math about how much they're making compared to how much they're going to pay you. If you can make them more than you're charging, they will always use you. So thinking about it in that way, because a lot of people have a bias, and I had this a little bit of, oh no, I don't want to raise my rates. I don't think I'm worth that much, but that's irrelevant to the point. The point is how much money you can make them is how much you're worth. So you keep reaching out, keep trying to do that for companies. And once you start doing that, that'll be a huge mindset shift once you actually make a company a lot of money, and then you charge a lot in return, and it finally hits your bank account. You're like, okay, I can actually do this. So that's a huge one, is getting rid of the mindset of raising my rates is it's on your personal worth. That's not the case. It's how much money you can make them.
Yeah. And even just the time they're going to spend training someone else and getting another writer up to speed, that might not be worth it for them. So even if they're a little like grumbly about raising your rates, you've made yourself sticky with a client to the point where they're like, listen, we've put this amount of resources and training into this person. It's probably more worth it for us to continue working with them because they know our product.
Yeah, and I'm a big advocate for this. Kind of goes counter to what we're saying, but not really, and I'll explain in a sec, is doing free work right off the bat. If you really want to work with a client, I'm a big advocate for it. And there's mixed reviews on this, but I think that's a great way to do it initially. And then you do so much free work for someone and give them so much value that they feel almost embarrassed by how much work you just did for them. So you do that, and then you can start to say, okay, if you want to continue this relationship and you really like this, what we're doing, then you can give them your rate, raise your rates, and then they're more likely to stick because they've actually experienced what you can do for them first. So that's kind of last resort way. You don't have to do that every single time, but that's a great way to get yourself in there. And that's a great, plan B if the client says they can't. It's never been the case to me where they say they can't afford it. It's because the companies I'm reaching out to are larger. So it's just like, I think that's a bias people have that's not a reality, especially if reaching out to the right clients.
Yeah, people have this thing where they're like, oh my God, $700 for a blog post. I wouldn't pay for that. I don't have that type of money. How could I ask someone for that? And it's like, well, this isn't your wallet we're paying with. This is the budget. And these, especially if you're in B2B, they have the budget.
Yeah, so that's why I'm always saying, reach out to the right companies, do your research first, and I always say follow the money. So go to, obviously we can talk about this later, but your passions should probably come second to you'll get passionate about something if the money starts rolling in from a niche. So I always say go to the niches with the most money, and they have huge budgets, but they're just not doing this one area that you can help them on, and then whatever that might be. And that's the best kind of mindset to think about when you're reaching out to companies. So just take a second and think about that of is there a bunch of money at this company in this niche? Are there a bunch of companies in that niche too? And, and then reach out to them.
And we can get into that too about choosing what is profitable versus what you're passionate about. In my course, 30 Days to Paid, the module about choosing a niche is 100% where people struggle the most. Is where they get caught up. It's where they kind of stop and get that analysis paralysis because they're like, well, I know what experience I have and what knowledge I have, but I don't think I want to write about that and get into this as a freelance writer. And my suggestion, you let me know what you think of this, is to choose something that is profitable, number one, but also if you're new, something that you have prior experience in so that you can say, listen, I've done X, Y, and Z, and this is why I think I can write to your target audience. Now, people who are transitioning out of a career field that they don't like sometimes have this opposition where they're like, listen, I just was a teacher for 30 years. I don't want to write about education. And I get that. But as someone who transitioned from a B2B technology salesperson into writing about that topic, I had a horror story of hating my career and hating what I did. And like, it was not a good time, but it was so much different writing about it than doing it and being in that field. So you'd be surprised what you hated and what you were burnt out on. It doesn't mean you're automatically going to hate writing about it.
Yeah, 1,000% agree. Could not agree more with every single point you just brought up and this is the beauty of it. If you're willing to delay your time to results, and off the bat, if you're willing to write about anything, then you can eventually write about your passion once you've proven yourself in the industry and you start to get clients and you start to know what you're doing. You start to learn how to outreach and how everything works. You start to be able to put together proposals and you learn everything. Then you can start to finally, okay, now that you have a base level of income coming in and you're feeling you're okay, then you can start to, okay, what would I be passionate about writing? Why don't I reach out to these industries right now? But you can't really follow your passion if you don't have any money coming in and you're not like, number one is to just write about anything. I'm lucky where I don't really care too much about any, like, if you pay the invoice, I will write the best I possibly can for you. Any niche, any industry, don't really care. So I'm lucky in that regard. But I want to touch on what you said about I call it specialized knowledge. So if let's say your parents were dentists, you're going to know something about dentistry. So reach out to them first. If you don't know where to start at all, think about what your natural proclivities and the things that you know how to do that other people don't really know, like something you give a presentation on for 30 minutes unprompted. That's probably where you should start if there's money in that niche. So it's finding that perfect balance of what you have the specialized knowledge in, and if there's money in that niche, then start reaching out to larger companies who have the budget for you.
Yeah, that's so key because nobody can take away your experiences and your knowledge. My pitch in the beginning when I started content writing was like, hey, because first of all, I'm not like a tech nerd. I don't read tech publications for fun, but I was able to say, as a salesperson, I used a CRM and I want to write toward an audience that is going to be making buying decisions about CRMs, right? So it's very compelling to relate your background to it. I like that you said that. Let's go into your future aspirations, your business goals. Where do you want to go with copywriting? Because there's so many paths. I'm actually working on a newsletter right now about the different freelance paths because I had a student in my course who she took on 2 clients and then got an in-house offer to write as a full-time employee. There's some people who just make a full-time income. They're paying their bills. That's cool. There's people like me who I started my own side business selling digital products with the free time. There's so many different paths you can take. What are your aspirations? What path do you want to take?
Yeah, so a few things on this one and a few stories, 2 stories in particular. Number one, you said about the person who took an in-house role, whatever. I've done that twice or 3 times now and quit immediately. So that's not something that I wanted to do. I was at an agency actually, and the person sitting across from me was a freelance photographer before they joined the agency. And I quit this job after 1 month, but I quit on this day of talking to this guy. So we were just talking, making like getting to know each other. It was my first week there, and he was saying how he couldn't find any clients in photography, so he just had to take the agency job. And I was like thinking, oh yeah, wow, you just gave up on your dreams. And I realized I just did the same thing. So that was huge for me. Right when I realized that, I was like, okay, I'm going for broke here. I'm going to make it and as a freelance copywriter, or I'm not, or I'm going to die. I don't care. So that was a huge shift there. But as far as the future aspirations, I kind of stumbled into a great gap in the market. And hopefully I can look back at this and see if this actually worked for me. But I actually just had an interview with a testosterone replacement therapy clinic pretty recently for a marketing director role, which I was not going to take. I just wanted to talk to them and see, kind of like poke around, see about the industry. So in the interview, this girl says to me, like, I asked her in the interview, I was like, so what does your email marketing look like? If I'm going to be marketing director, I'm probably gonna have to oversee that. And she was like, we don't do any email marketing. And it just alarm bells going off in my head. So I was like, wow, okay. So it came from an interview. So I left there, and now I'm reaching out to testosterone replacement therapy and hormone replacement therapy clinics. And I've just been landing them right and left because it's a huge gap in the market that I found. So that's another thing to think of for other people to go here, I guess, for advice for if you're a copywriter and you're looking where you're going to go for the future. Keep poking around as long as you can until you find that one thing that's a gap and you realize there's a huge potential there, and then just go all in on that for as long as it takes. And don't spread your attention too thin on things. Don't have 10 digital products here and there and try to manage them all. Go deep instead of going wide. So I'm a big believer in that. So I think finding the one thing that has high leverage, like study how leverage works and find something that has super high leverage where you can talk to a lot of people at once and there's a lot of money involved, and something you can sell through that is a huge way to go. So I guess that's next on the horizon for me is testing this out with a few of these clinics and building out their entire email funnel and then templating that to where it's a product that I can sell for a huge high ticket item to all of them, which frees up my time too, because I don't have to actually be writing the emails. I can just figure out the ones that work and then template it out and sell it to all of them. So that's pretty specifically what's on the radar for me now.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's interesting because when you help one type of business with a specific problem, it becomes so valuable. What I did with copywriting is I chose, like, it started off as B2B, then it was tech, and then it was SaaS, software as a service. And then I niched down even one level below that, which is sales enablement software. So you probably are aware of this, but companies are using automated prospecting software to send out what are called email sequences to prospects to book these meetings. And I went into that target market, the sales enablement technology space. And once I had racked up 2 to 3 logos, the rest of the sales technology people immediately understood that I could write for their audience. So what you're talking about with the hormone replacement and the testosterone, that's a very specific segment of the health and wellness supplements space. And the minute you land a client that has a logo of, hey, we do testosterone, blah, blah, blah in this field, you become so compelling to that audience. And it sounds like you're niching down on deliverable with the email funnel. So these are the strategies that people really need to be taking.
Yeah, it's all the specialized knowledge that comes into play at the very end. So that was something I studied my entire life. Just for some reason, I was actually, one of my majors in college was biochemistry. So I know pretty much everything about it, which is just a whole background. So I'm lucky on that front. But, even if you get into something, if you find something that's high leverage and you see a gap in the market, take action on it and learn everything about it immediately so you can have that specialized knowledge and you can go deep in there and just go all in. So I think it's huge. Speaking of things that are huge and growing in the market, like people, I want to make this distinction for up and coming copywriters is you don't need to get caught up in the whole AI is the next thing. I have to do AI. I have to write on these new big things. There are brick and mortar stores all across the entire world that need copywriting services. So every single company on the earth needs copywriting. So you don't need to do high flying tech entrepreneur stuff. You can just write for like brick oven pizza stores and just do that as your niche.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because a lot of people actually are reaching out to me being like, well, I think I want to do this, but is there even a point with AI? Still a huge need for copywriting, for marketers, for writers, for that human element. I'm glad you brought that up. That's a huge concern.
Yeah, so with with the whole AI chat GPT thing, it can write, if you say, write me a poem in the voice of Shakespeare about a pineapple, it can do that like pretty well. But if you're gonna say like, sell me this SaaS product with all these like tips and tricks, like there's just no prompt that you can put in for something that's so advanced to sell to another company. And there's a bunch of touch points through emails, and there's so much more that goes into it that I don't think AI will ever get anywhere close to in our lifetime. So if you're selling, depends on what you're doing. If you're doing some general content writing, you might have to be a little worried maybe. But if you're doing something that takes like this, a salesman's psychology that you need to know exactly how to do on every single line, it has to be perfect. ChatGPT is nowhere close in my opinion. I've tried to prompt it to do some of the things that I do, and it's just nowhere near. So if you're in the right thing, you're actually using your psychology and you're using like the copy part of it, you don't have to be too worried in my opinion.
Agreed. What encouragement or advice would you give to copywriters, freelancers who are just pursuing this journey? They're just starting out.
I would say don't do this you can start this as a side hustle, but if you're going to do this, I really think the only people that are going to make it very far are the people that dive all into it. So even if it is your side hustle, it should be all that you think about and all that you want to do. So for that, I think you should expand your time horizons, because there's all this get rich quick stuff about copywriting, and you can get very successful relatively fast. Like it's pretty crazy how fast your income can scale through this. However, you should be doing it for as long as it takes until you get there. And I made a post about this a while back, is like, I would do this if I had to pay to do it. Like, I don't care. I would do this completely for free if I had to pay to do it, because it teaches you so much about the world and about different industries. And it teaches you how to write, which will help you in any other job, and anything you record from what you do. It'll teach you how to outreach. It'll teach you how to apply to jobs if that's what you want to do. Like, just, it's such a great skill. It can super high income, high leverage skill that you can learn. So just do it for the heck of it too.
Yeah, being in it for the long term and not expecting instant results. It's beautiful that you can make a full-time income pretty quickly and escape your 9 to 5 job. That was my story, but what other job would you just walk in the door and expect to be making $200,000? It's not a get rich quick scheme. You have to bring value, and it's just like any other job. But if you love doing it and you want to do this for the long term, be patient. I like that you said that. You want to be doing something that even if you weren't getting paid, you'd still want to do it. And that's how I feel about writing and marketing as well. If it takes me 5 to 10 years to reach my goals, that would suck, but I'd be willing to do it because I'm liking what I'm doing.
Well, think about the alternative, right? My brother and his wife are both going to be doctors, but they're still going through medical school. My brother just graduated, but he's been in college for 8 years. So to make doctor money, lawyer money, you have to spend that time anyway. So you might as well just get there faster doing this. It's the same amount of work that's going to go into both of those in terms of like the hours you're putting in. If you're really into it, it's all going to be strenuous and hard, but this will just get you there faster if you just disconnect the outcomes from your inputs. So If you're just outreaching every day, like you might hate it. You might be sitting there and you might not want to do it. But if you're just doing that en masse every day, eventually you'll get clients and you'll screw up a few sales calls and you'll screw up a few whatever, but you'll learn fast and you keep outreaching, you keep going, and eventually you're going to get there. And then you're going to get to the point where you get inbound traffic. And then that's when it all changes. But the faster you do more outreach and the more you do, the faster you'll get to that point. So just it's not even like a scammy thing of like you can make money online, completely replace your 9 to 5. It's 100% true, and you can do it if you actually just dive all in.
It's a numbers game. And I like what you said too about going all in, because it really is such a different mentality when you have a client that's expecting the work. You'd be surprised what you'll do and how you'll accomplish something. It's a hot debate. Like, do you quit your job and take a risk and pursue this, or do you do this as a side hustle? And I've just found that the people who could focus on it 100% get results a lot faster and don't give up because they see that traction. For me, I was collecting unemployment checks and those checks were running out. And I was like, well, I have this amount of time to actually start making money, or else I'm going to have to start looking for a sales job again and hating my life. So let me just give my all.
Yeah. And that's why I like your story about this too. It's fantastic because I'm not against either strategy. I think what I think about these strategies is if you're keeping your full-time job and you're doing this on the side, if you have people to take care of and you have mouths to feed and a roof to put over people's heads, then by all means don't leave your full-time job, but just do this every other waking hour and just try to make it work. But I like both strategies because also if you, like I said before, it's crazy how successful you can be if you don't give yourself a choice. So if you decide to burn the boats and just leave your job, like my backup plan was to donate my blood plasma and drive Uber Eats, which I've driven Uber Eats, haven't had to sell my white blood cells yet, but that's the backup plan if this doesn't work. So I'm very much of the burn the boat strategy. Like I just don't care, it's going to happen. So take either of those strategies, but it's going to be the same amount of work you have to put in. So you're just going to be working longer hours if you're at a full-time position. But there's options that you can do. You'll get really crafty if you really go all in on this and you like there's no other choice. You're going to do this for the next 5 years if it works or it doesn't. So having that mindset is huge.
I'm thinking of episode 2. If you ever did want to come back, what I'm thinking the topic could be is like taking an in-house role as a writer, because I had my own experience of going in-house. I believe it was 2021, and I lasted for, I'm going to say 7 to 8 months, and I quit, and it was like horrible. It was horrible. Being a copywriter at freelance is so different from going in-house. So yeah, we should talk about that sometimes. It sounds like you had a similar experience.
Yeah, I'd absolutely be down to do that. I have so many funny stories. I've had so many jobs. So the longest I've ever had a job was like a few months. I'm the worst employee that there possibly is. I've always hated, taking instruction from authority, which is a bit different because I don't feel that way about my writing. I can take feedback pretty easily, but having someone tell me what to do, I don't enjoy that. And I like to just having autonomy over my own schedule and my own income. So finding a way to make money on the internet. And I just learned that you can make as much as you want if you learn how to do it. It's really just that simple. So that was just like so attractive for me. I knew when I learned that, I was like, I'm never going back to any in-house role. I don't care if they're paying me millions of dollars a year. I'm just not going to do it. So yeah, that's a huge one. But also, you can learn a lot at an in-house job if you actually do your best and you actually like try to keep learning. But I left one job because I completed all my work and I had everything completely done. I was asking them what else I could do to learn. Like I was going to clean the break room. I just had nothing to do. And I was asking them, they're just like, sit down, make sure, like act like you're working, whatever. I left that day, I was gone. So I can't tolerate that. I always have to be learning, have to be doing something. So if you're in an in-house role, do the best you can to the best of your ability. You can also transition to online if you negotiate and you get to a point where you're providing so much value for your company that you might be able to negotiate an online position. And then from there, on the other half of that, then learn how to do copywriting. So you have options. There's things you can do.
Yeah. The bureaucracy and like, hey, just make it look like you're working. We're concerned about the optics of this. It's infuriating when you have that entrepreneurial mindset where you're like, well, I think we should be doing this because it'll get us here and we can optimize this. We could be more efficient. And they're just like, no, this is the way we do things just because it's the way we do things. That answer is infuriating for people that think like us.
Yeah, I don't advocate for this, but I was just working on my copywriting business at my desk in my job for most hours of the day. And I would do like 2 hours of work for the company. And then the rest of the day I was just working for again, I don't advocate for this, like work the best you can for your job. But that's how strongly I feel about that. I just hate it so much. So, and I always knew I wanted to build my own thing. I kind of have the blood of conquest. I want to build an empire. So I've always known that I wanted to go all into it, but it is tough. Both strategies are tough, right? So if you work for an in-house role, you have the safety of a monthly paycheck and it gets addicting and you want to do that. I understand that, but it's also like that pain of that job is long and it festers and it gets worse than just the brunt pain of like not getting any clients, being on your own. At least you feel some excitement in your life and you can go out there and like reach out to clients and run your own business. And even if you're not making any money, I can't advocate for it more. So it's a huge message I want to get out there.
Yeah, same. I always say on my YouTube channel, I took a 50% pay cut from my sales job to become a copywriter, and I would do that over and over again, even at 50% of what some salary was giving me, just because I know this is a better work style for me.
Yeah, and it's not like you're quitting your job to be like a starving artist. This is a skill that makes businesses a lot of money. This is a very, very valuable skill. So it's a calculated decision. It's not just like I have a passion for writing and I want to do this. And that's fine too, but like just realize that when you learn how to write copy, it's a hugely valuable skill. So it's a calculated risk.
Big facts.
Mhm.
Okay, so tell people where they can reach out to you, because I have a feeling that writers are going to be like, I need to reach out to Jeff and get his advice on this. So where can people reach you?
So the only place you can reach me is on LinkedIn because I am banned on Facebook for some reason that I don't understand why. I don't have TikTok or Twitter, and I'm hacked on Instagram and Snapchat. So reach out to me on LinkedIn. It's just my name, Jeff Poppe, JEFFPOPPE. And yeah, I'll definitely respond to you. I'm on there about 8 hours a day. So I'll respond to you if you reach out to me on LinkedIn.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Jeff.